Hi, this is James O'Keefe. I'm captain of the Massachusetts Pirate Party. Welcome to another episode of Massachusetts Pirate News. We're with the Pirate Party in Massachusetts, if that's not completely obvious. I'm joined today by Quartermaster Joe and First Officer Steve. How are the two of you?
Doing well?
I am fantastic.
Excellent.
And yourself? And yourself?
I'm doing well. The weekend's almost over. Vacation's coming up, so it'll all be a lovely time just to relax soon enough. So with that, our thing that came across is from Glenn Mooney. Glenn Moody, excuse me, who posted on Tech Dirt that apparently the French government is looking to fight online fraud by having a block list that all browsers would have to, a website block list that all browsers would have to support. And this came via Mozilla, the folks behind the Firefox browser. Anyone want to give a further summary?
Oh, you mean politics trying to reach in and mess with things that they really have no idea or understanding? Where they just want to kind of crush free speech and your right to do stuff, whether it be intelligent or not, but your rights to do things. That seems right on track for a politician in nowadays environment.
Yeah, but at the same
Um,
time, Granny needs to be warned. Granny needs to be prevented from clicking on a phishing site that's going to have them send her life savings to them.
ah, phishing site. Let's see, what else? Kind of control it. Let's see. You know who's really they should look to, who's been just doing a great job of that? China. If where you really wanted to strip away the rights of your citizens, yay.
Yeah,
Why
I
don't we
mean,
just go?
sorry,
Sorry,
Joe.
go ahead.
Please continue, Joe.
I was kind of rambling at that point, sir. But I appreciate your consideration. Please go
All
ahead.
right. So, I mean, I understand the motivation. They're trying to prevent fraud. Okay, that's an admirable thing to do. The approach that they're suggesting, having a government created block list that browsers would have to implement. I mean, basically, the idea is that you person's browsing the web, they click on a link, you check the URL against and see if it's on the block list, and if it's on the block list, you just say you don't allow the user to access the site. Well, that is certainly a way to do it. I think it's not a good way to do it. Simply because there are, I mean, I think there's too much opportunity for abuse, in terms of, if there's not really so far I haven't seen a way to sort of, verify that that's what it's going to be used for. It would also allow, think of all of the other governments that, um, would like to restrict what their citizens could read. This would be basically making, requiring browsers to be plug and play with that sort of thing. And finally, I think it would also make political elections really interesting. The incumbent, could conceivably say that, well, my opponent is, um, my opponent is fraudulent, so we'll just put them on the block list, and or put the donation page for their, political campaign on the block list, and go from there. Joe, you had something else.
I did. I mean, I guess the Patriot Act was done with the best of intentions. Just somehow that one went sideways. I mean, I wouldn't trust most politicians if, as far as I can throw them. And you know what? I'm a pretty big dude. I could throw some of these guys pretty far. I mean, they're nothing but sticks and bones. But I still wouldn't trust them as far as I could throw them. You know. So there's always a second reason or something that they're trying to squash. And, most of the time they have no problem trampling over the rights and freedoms of the individual in attempts to gain more control and more power. So I think pretty much I'm at this point tired of seeing us slowly give away our rights and give away our rights and give away our rights, especially when it comes to the internet, where we've seen such a huge impact as to what it can do to really give power back to the people. And even these little chips away are still they're relentless, and if we keep on letting them chip away at it, we're just going to lose all rights of freedom of speech, all rights of that. Granted, there are some bad actors, but at the same time, there are plenty of people fighting against these bad actors. Uh, but all these acts, like the Earn It Act and COSA and all these other ones, they're just, again, ways that they might have the guise of best intentions, but the road to hell is paved with good intentions. If you don't really understand what the material is or what you're doing, you're in your good gestures, you could lose a lot more than what the actual act you're fighting against. Or as the old saying goes, the cure is worse than the disease. So, Jamie, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, to get back to one of the things Steve was mentioning. Yeah, I could imagine if this was in place in 2024, or maybe not. Let's say some future election, right? And the incumbent decides to shut down the donation page for their opponent. And I'm sure the Supreme Court would get on that really fast, right? I mean, I wouldn't trust the court to deal with it as expeditiously as it would need to. And if it's done after the election and the incumbent wins, then lots of people are harmed because one candidate wasn't allowed to get their message out. And isn't that the whole thing about the First Amendment, that people are supposed to be able to speak? But the other thing is, the copyright industry would jump on this. If they can go and force everyone's browser to block sharing sites that they don't like, especially where there's no, if you put the site up and it's a legitimate site, there's no harm in putting sites up. No one's going to come to you and say, oh, every false site you put up, you got to pay us $1 million, right? There's none of that. And so if you give them the tools to allow everyone to be blocked, particular sites to be blocked by every browser, the copyright industry will use it to all of our detriment. Steve.
Well, I was going to say, there's speaking from the Department of Repressive Governments, I mean, another mental exercise to do is sort of like, what would Florida do with this? Or any of the countries or any of these states in the U.S. that have become hostile towards LGBTQIA issues, again, hostile to reproductive rights and the ability to get an abortion. Texas recently passed a law that prevents municipalities from creating local laws that have to do with like worker safety and heat exposure. So, I mean, conceivably, even, someone who's working outdoors, who's interested in, have in information about how to stay safe in the heat, or how to organize to get those rights for workers, would also could also be impacted. There's there's a list of bad things, and we just seem to be making it longer in just, the few minutes that we've been talking about it.
Absolutely. Now, phishing is an important issue. We've done trainings for people how to recognize phishing attempts. One of the techniques is if you're using a browser that's on a laptop or a Chromebook or desktop or something like that, you can go and look at what the full domain is, not paypal.com.imgonnaSoFishYou.com, right? And there are techniques that you can use to protect yourself. And as always, if it sounds too good, it probably is. But there's a service Joe was talking about. Joe, do you want to give us a quick summary of it for dealing with the other scourge that we have to deal with, namely spam calls?
Sure. I mean, just to give some context and background, right before we started recording, I was like, hey, you know what's a great idea? Why don't we just build an AI database in order to just mess with trolls? Because one of my favorite personal things is when a scammer calls me, God, I love wasting their time. And, I mean, I even got as far as asking what my last scammer who was calling me up, it was Bob. I could have sworn they were from India, but maybe that was just my own partake of this. But apparently they were from Texas, and they loved their hot dogs and their barbecue. But I think they knew the jig was up when I was asking them what they were wearing, and then they promptly hung up on me. However, I thought it was a great idea that we build a database or an AI platform just to mess with scammers. And Jamie informed me that there was one that already exists. And it's actually greatly called the Jolly Roger. So piratey. I love it. And so I would just want to bring it to everyone's attention that this does exist. They were featured in Shark Tank, so it's actually a legitimate company. And yeah, you could have your fun with some of these scam calls and spammers and all the people that harass us all on a regular basis. And I just think it's for a few dollars, it's pretty funny. Jamie, could you tell a little more that you know about it?
Yeah, folks can find it at jollyrogertelephone.com. And just to be clear, we aren't endorsing this. We like the concept, but this in no way is an endorsement. We've not been paid by the Jolly Roger Telephone Company or any of its subsidiaries or owners or partners or anybody. We have no connection to these folks whatsoever. Just want to put that disclaimer. But it's a great concept for just wasting the time of these folks. I mean, it's all a numbers game. It's like the scam where, you pick 100 people and you say stock A is, you pick 100 people and 50% of them get the stock A is going to go up and 50% get stock A is going to go down. And then whichever way it goes, the next week you say, see, I was right that stock A went up. So now I'm going to pick a different stock, and you further subdivide those such that you repeat that a bunch of times. And the folks who are in that subset where you've always been right think that you really can pick the future, but it's just a numbers game. So making it more costly, wasting their time, makes it uneconomical for them. And so this is just one service, or as Joe said, just calling and listening to them and talking with them can waste their time. And it's highly recommended and very amusing.
So that's sort of funny. I've typically taken the opposite approach where, where scam calls, if by the, typically within 10 or 15 seconds, you realize where this is going. And I just simply put the receiver down. I just hang up. It's not about delaying their time. It's about, it's about saving my time. And one of the things that I've also noticed are quite a lot of automated, outbound telemarketing calls where, it's the same person in the same voice making the same dumb opening joke. And
Paula? Is this
what?
Paula? Gotten that from some police officers, patrolman, give us your money thing.
Yeah. Oh, hey, I was about to. Thanks for picking up. I was about to put on my answering machine. Click.
I mean,
Hello.
my technique.
Goodbye.
So, but my technique does not work on any of those robocalls for like that are automated. So that's what I really liked about this whole Jolly Roger thing. And out there, disclaimer: yes, they're not paying us. This is something that I completely just discovered this afternoon. I just think it's great because it's what it does is waste their time. And if we waste their time and make it so that they're not making money and they're not able to go out and scam, but the very nature of these calls is that they'll dial 50 to 100 different phone numbers at the exact same time. So, like Jamie was saying, it's a numbers game. And if they dial in and they're wasting their resources on people that know that they're just wasting resources, it does slow them down and it does hurt their overall net processes. And if we have a system by which if enough of us know, um, it is in fact one of those things where if we all work together on this, we really can beat the system and just end the spam calls once and for all. Because if we all work together and they're not making money, then they're going to knock it off. But right now they're making money because, again, numbers game. And it's one of those things that we really have to band together to stop. So,
Yeah. What's the
any
old
tools?
saying? Oh, sorry, Joe.
Yeah, I'm just saying any tools that we have in the arsenal against it would be very helpful. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Steve.
I was gonna say it's like there's a saying that there's a sucker born every minute. The internet has just made it far more efficient to access those suckers.
Speaking of standing together, last but not least, by all means, is Fight for the Future has a website called badinternetbills.com. They talk about some of the bills that we've talked about, we've kind of railed against in the past, like the Earn It Act or the Restrict Act. And I think we've even talked about Cooper Davis Act. A lot of these would end encryption. Cooper Davis particularly would say, in order to fight the harms of drugs, we would, Facebook for whatever would have to scan all messages that went through their system. So you wouldn't be able to have end-to-end encryption. And this could affect Signal as well. Somehow they never think legalizing drugs maybe, or going and decriminalizing them and having, standards for drugs so that people don't get drugs that they don't know what's in it. They never think that that's an option. And we've seen some of these things are building off, SESTA and FOSTA, which have gone and removed the protections that websites had if someone was a sex worker and they were advertising on such sites. They can't do that anymore because that could be trafficking, and the sites could go after that, ignoring the fact that most trafficking is, most child, most abductions are by their parents, but whatever. So there's some very, they have some other bills that are there, like COSA, which is a censorship bill and would make it, could allow potentially a future Trump administration from saying LGBTQ plus kids couldn't find out information. that only heteronormative or only being heterosexual is the only option out there. Or being trans wouldn't be allowed, and they couldn't find out more information about that. So it's clearly a censorship bill. So there's just other ones to look at that we all have to contend with and we all have to advocate against.
So one of the ones that caught my attention, or what the one bill in the list of, actually it's two bills, but they're Utah rather than federal, was Utah's new law that says that when a Utah resident tries to sign up for a social media account, the social media service is responsible for verifying their age. I'm sort of curious how many social media companies, and granted there are only a few that matter, will simply stop taking new users in Utah as a result of this. I don't know. Any thoughts?
I mean, I would if that were my site, it would just mean you come from Utah, block. So actually, I think that's happened, right? Haven't Pornhub, basically said, yeah, if we've detected you're in Utah and we don't want to comply with this law, so no porn for you. VPN, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So there are sites that are doing that where they're just geo-blocking on where someone is coming from.
Yeah, the other one, basically the which one was it? It had to do the Restrict Act, where the idea that the president, now or future, would be able to ban Americans from using specific apps by claiming they pose a threat to national security. I have the feeling that if you were to, like, if our federal government were to block the use of TikTok, or tell like the mobile carriers, you've got to have this app self-delete from phones or whatever, I have the feeling that the next election would probably have one of the largest turnouts of young people in the history, in our history. And it's sort of funny because I, being the dumpy middle-aged person that I am, I have friends with teenage kids, and some of them have been sort of, anxiously watching congressional debates about this stuff, and they're not happy. It's like, the don't write off who votes, who don't piss enough of the wrong people off, because if they show up to vote, and younger demographics tend to be less reliable voters, but if you turn them into, you may get what you ask for.
Well, the GOP has certainly been going down this censorship party, so hopefully that'll burn them. Unfortunately, it's not like the Democrats have been embracing people's right to know as much. So they're both a problem. So with that, for folks, on September 2nd, we're going to be at the Boxborough Fifers Day. We've got a table, and with any luck, we'll have, a tent, and we'll have chairs and all that other stuff. But we'll be giving out, we'll have buttons and giving out, leaflets on ourselves and on ways to protect your privacy. And we'd love it if you're in the area, if you could come and join us, even if only to say hi, but certainly we'd love folks behind the table with us. We're also going to be doing a camera mapping outing on September 16th. I got that one right? Yeah. Yes, September 16th. In East Boston. We haven't picked the location yet, but it will probably be going from one blue line station to another and mapping all the cameras in between and around that area. And then finally, we've scheduled our fall conference for October. There'll be more information up about that soon. And we're looking for a location. So if you can help with that, by all means, send us an email, info@masspirates.org. You can always find us at masspirates.org. That is preferable to any social media site, YouTube, TikTok, or wherever. We love the open internet, and that's the best place to find us. With that, we hope you'll do what every other YouTuber asks you to do with these things. You know the drill. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Steve. And thank you all folks for watching. We hope you found this informative. You will see us in a week or two. Take care, folks.